What's up? What's up? This is another episode of the Dub Academy brought to you by Paige. I'm glad to be here. This training, I just want to go over the importance of story. And this comes from a series of longer trainings that come from my Kismet Story Selling Academy. So I'm super happy to be here with Dub. This Seth Godin quote kind of sums it up. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but about the stories you tell. If you think about who we are as human beings, we've been hardwired through our entire evolutionary history to tell stories. And then the other quote that's commonly talked about is that facts tell and stories sell. And that's because the majority of people, whether we realize it or not, we're actually buying from an emotional place rather than a logical facts standpoint. And so this is another quote, and this one's from Donald Miller, who created StoryBrand, which blew up, is what your customers really want is to be invited into a story. And if you think about what you experience when you get to hang out with friends, is you love hearing good stories, and that's really what connects people. So what I like to tell my clients when they're sending out videos, especially through Dub, is your goal when you tell stories is to project your audience into the transformation you offer. You're putting a spotlight onto where they want to go and who they can become through your service, your programs, or your products, right? And a key tip here is to speak to one person. So I often tell people, don't use pronouns like them or they. Your goal is to talk to one person. You want to be using the pronoun you want to be talking to somebody through the camera. Even if you can't see them, you want to sort of feel them, because you're projecting them into where they want to go. And it's really not about you. It's about what you can do for others. You want to have people feeling like they're already transforming with you just by being a part of your story, just by listening and taking the time to do so. I believe wholeheartedly that video is the number one way to tell stories on the internet, and it is the second best thing you could do to being in person. I've got a couple of stats that back that up as well. 95% more of your message is understood when it's watched versus just simply read. Companies that use video in their marketing, they get 66% more qualified leads per year. As you can imagine, because if someone just reads something, they have to read between the lines, they have to pick up on tonality, they have to pick up on your energy. And when it comes to video, you really get to express a lot more. The human brain is actually wired to take in information 60,000 times faster when it comes to audio and visual, rather than just simply text. And video and email leads to 200 to 300% increase in click-through rates, which I can personally tell you is my experience as well. So in other trainings, if you've maybe seen them from me, I talk about 4 different types of sort of story categories, if you will. The first is our shared legacy stories. These are the stories of why do we care to be promoting what we promote? Why are we making this offer? What is it about the journey that we've been through that says, hey, the legacy I'm going to leave on this planet is because I care about helping you, right? And you and you and you and you. And then you can multiply that at scale. The second category is offer stories and offer assets. So what can you share with people that shows them your unique process, your unique methodology, the reason why you've crafted what you do, your service or your program or your product, in a way that really gets massive benefit for them. Anything that you can create for your offer is an asset. Those videos can be used time and time again to help people in the buying process. The third category is case studies and testimonials. So how are you giving context to the testimonials that you've collected for your business? And if you are watching this now and you're just getting started, don't forget that you can use case studies from out there in the world. You can tell stories of people who are using similar techniques or similar methodologies as yours, and they're finding success, until you build up your own set of case studies and testimonials. And then the last category are allegory stories, which I could do an entire training just on that alone. And it's basically stories that are seemingly unrelated, but they provide relatable experiences, and they, most importantly, entertain and engage, and you can tie them back to your offer. This is a question I get all the time. Well, how long should my stories be? The answer to this is you got to use your intuition. If you think you're being boring, then you're probably being boring, but you also have to use your intuition. People are ready and willing to learn more if the context is right. And I also have a framework that I'm going to share with you called the SALT framework, which is going to help you tell stories faster and with more efficiency and more engagement to get people to say yes. So I'll rattle off these bullet points right here because it's important. Like, yes, people do have short attention spans right now. I'm sorry, what's that? Squirrel? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm paying attention here. But there is no right answer to the question of how long should my videos be, right? You want to practice versions of it, short versions, medium versions, long versions, and it depends on the scenarios. Because your goal is to get videos out, take imperfect action, see the data, and tweak, right? I love this one, and I actually heard this one from Russell Brunson. He said, I've told my stories so many times, I'm practically sick of them. And that's your goal. You don't just tell a story one time. Your story is the foundational principles of what your business stands for. So tell them over and over and over again, right? And as you consistently tell them and tell different stories about your offer and about, how you got here and about why you care to help, your message will become more concise over time. So that's it. The 3-step process here is tell compelling stories that invite your audience into the transformation, repeat those stories as often as you can and get better at telling them over time, and put them in front of people who can say yes to your offers. I'm all about simplicity, and it really doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And I want to share this with you. Kismet for me is such a powerful word. It means destiny, and I help people create their destiny by design. When you tell stories and you get to show up as yourself, and that means no radio announcer voice like, are you sad? Are you sick and tired? Like, you don't have to be anybody but yourself. When you tell genuine stories, you get to be authentic, which means you get to attract the kind of people that you would love to work with and the people that will naturally resonate with you. It's one of the reasons why I teach people the Kismet story arc. And that'll be an entire other training on its own. But if you'll notice this dip right here in the middle, this dip is vulnerability. This dip is admitting that there are roadblocks along the road of life. And if 2020 taught us anything, life can be unpredictably tumultuous at times. And when we learn to share that instead of painting a everything is roses and rainbows kind of story, that's when people will actually listen and tune in. And you're going to find that they want to move forward with you because they can relate. So let me share this with you. Imagine we've just gone through the entire story arc and you are ready to tell your stories, whether it's a case study story, a legacy story, or an offer story or an allegory story. This framework will help you not only tell that story effectively, but it'll help you engage your audience. Now, this comes from the idea that back in ancient times, salt was actually one of the most valuable commodities because they didn't have refrigerators. So if you were going to keep your food preserved, they would actually pay soldiers in salt so that those soldiers could take food on longer journeys. And that's where that phrase worth your salt or worth your weight in salt comes from. And so that's what I think of when I think of what video can you create that shows your audience that you're worth your salt when it comes to what you offer. And that's what the framework is here. So I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but I invite you to kind of think how this can work in some of the stories that you can tell your audience through video. So first, you want to kick it off. Use a little pun here, but with a dash of intrigue. And that's also kind of formally known in the marketing industry as a hook. So you might start off with a question, right? You might, do you ever feel like you're overcomplicating things in your business? Well, let me tell you how this crazy experience I had, shaped everything for me. That's a dash of intrigue. So you're going to want to kick it off with something that says, hey, stick around and listen because I've got something to say and you probably want to listen to it. The next thing right here is the S. So it's, let me tell you a quick story. And you can literally say that. I am surprised by all the people who try and skirt around to this. I'll do it all the time. I'll say, hey, just let me tell you a quick story. And picture yourself leaning into that. That's what happens naturally when somebody says that. Let me just share with you this quick story, or I want to tell you about an experience I just had. And that causes you to lean in. So you want to tell that quick story. And then you want to do it in a way that does these other things. So A is to involve your audience by asking questions. And if I have the time on this, I'll actually give you guys an example and a rundown, but you want to ask your audience stuff like, can you imagine that? Or have you ever felt that? Or does this sound like you? Or, are you going through this right now? Right. And that's when you're involving that audience. The L, and I learned this from a really successful copywriter, is that far too often we think people are supposed to know the lesson to take away from a particular story or a message that we're sharing, but they don't actually, like, let's not make assumptions that people get it. You actually tell them the lesson learned, right? So this is the part where you're kind of summarizing your story and you say, hey, the moral of this story or the lesson that came from all of this is XYZ. And then you'll tie that lesson back into telling them what you do, so that telling them what to do next so that you can help transform their situation. So this is the SALT framework. And I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys a quick example of how this can work. So let me specifically use one that would make sense in this context. So do you ever feel like you're overcomplicating the process of recording videos and sending them out? Trying to be way too perfect, trying to make sure that your lighting is 100% perfect and that you say all the right things and it's perfectly edited and dialed in this pretty little bow and pretty little package. And next thing you know, you actually haven't sent any videos at all. Well, let me tell you a quick story. I was actually on a train in London. I was getting ready to do some touristy things and I was thinking to myself, how did I get here where I've invested so much money in complicated tech, but it's not paying off? You see, by this point, I had invested $30,000 learning how to set up all these advanced funnels and piecing together all these bunches of softwares, trying to find the perfect copywriting for these long form sales pages, running the advertisement, trying to make it all happen. And it would take me weeks on end. Have you ever been there where you're spending weeks trying to get this one thing set up? And then when you finally get it launched, you're like, that wasn't even as exciting as I thought it was going to be. And meanwhile, what was happening was in the background, I was using Dub to send videos off to screen share people's websites. I was telling them like, hey, if you changed this, and this about your website, I guarantee you you'll generate more leads. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you if you want to hire me. So here I was in the background doing something so simple as hitting record, not caring if I had perfect production value, and that's why I was in London trying to get the perfect production for my Facebook ads. But in the background of this, I was making way more money, landing way more contracts, getting way more sales by just doing the simple. And so I'm guessing that there's something deep down in you that says like, maybe it's time for you to embrace simple. Does that resonate with you in any way? Because I'll tell you, the lesson that I learned was that the more I complicate it, the more I erode my profitability and my confidence level. So the lesson for me is that the more I can simplify things and just get to the heart of being myself, not trying to pile on a bunch of marketing psychology, marketing tactics, I had a coach call it sales malarkey, not trying to do that, but actually just being myself and sending out very simple, fast videos. That's when it all changed. That's when multiple six figures was like no big deal, right? And so if you're interested in making it simple and you want to learn how to tell stories that convert and you want to put together very simple instantaneous landing pages and you don't want to have to worry with all least generated $20,000 to $30,000 through a very simple process, then I invite you to book a call with me. Okay, so I hope that this has made sense for you guys. I hope that this story framework can at least help you take that very next step and show you that the power of being authentic and real. And this is what I want to leave you with, is that imperfect action is better than perfect inaction every single time, every time. So I hope you see this. I hope you think of a story that you can tell in a certain way and you get out there and you just hit record and do it. And if you want to learn any more about working together and getting my eyeballs on your business and your strategy and your stories, you can learn more at kismetstoryselling.com. And of course, you can go to dub.com. You can also go to kismetstoryselling.com and get yourself a Dub trial. If you're not already using this magical tool, I highly recommend it. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.